class 6. With this video, we are going to start the third chapter that is there in a book, which is called force. Okay, so let us start with its definition. A force is basically a push or pull, remember. Okay, all forces in one way or the other are basically a push or a pull. All right, now what does it do? What does a push or pull do? Okay, what it does is it tends to or actually produces movement in a body. Okay, let me explain this line. Okay, first, so what happens is whenever we apply a force on a body, okay, whenever we apply a force on a body, what happens is the body, there is movement produced in the body. Like for example, I have this eraser over here. Okay, so I push this eraser with this pen. So I'm pushing it. So what is happening is the eraser starts moving. All right. So this push or this force that I'm applying on the eraser, okay, is producing movement. On the body, on the eraser. Okay. So remember, forces, they actually produce movement, like in this example that I just showed in the video. Okay, and or we've written tends to. Now what does this mean? This means that it's not necessary that every time forces produce movement. It's not that. Like for example, we have a concrete wall. Say for example, we have a concrete wall. Okay, and we try to push it. We try to push that concrete wall. Do you think I'll be able to, say for example, I'm trying to push the concrete wall that is there in a class. Okay, do you think I'll be able to push it? Of course not. Okay, so what is happening there? So I'm pushing the wall means I'm applying a force. Okay, I'm applying a force. But although I'm applying a force on the wall is not moving. Okay, so my force wants to move the wall, but still the wall is not moving. So that is what is meant by tends to. Okay, the push or pull wants to move the body, wants to produce movement in the body, but may not always be successful, may not always be able to produce movement in the body. Okay, and in some cases, like in cases of this eraser being pushed, movement is actually being produced. As you can see, movement is actually being produced. All right, but it is not necessary that in every case movement will be produced. So that is why we've written a push or pull which tends to, meaning wants to but is not always successful to produce movement. Okay, so a push or pull which tends to or actually produces movement. Okay, actually produces movement, like in the case of the eraser, actually produces movement in a body. All right, now let's discuss this. Or changes its shape or size. Okay, so say for example, I have this spring. So here is the spring. Okay, this is the spring. Okay, so I can stretch this spring, I can squeeze this spring. Okay, I can pull the spring. So what happens is when I pull the spring, what happens? Its length increases. Or when I squeeze it, okay, when I push it from both sides, what happens? Its length decreases. Or it could be, I have a piece of paper, I squeeze the piece of paper. Okay, so what happens? The paper changes its shape and also its size. All right, so what are we doing when we are pushing the spring from both the sides, or when you're stretching it? All right, so what happens? Its shape and size changes. So remember, when we are stretching it, so what are we doing? We are basically applying a force. Okay, so this is how we define a force. A push or pull which tends to or actually produces movement in a body or changes its shape or size is called force. Okay, so these are basically the effects that forces produce. Change in shape or size of a body, or produces movement or tends to produce movement in a body. All right, these are basically the effects that push or pull produces. Okay, so push or pull basically is what is called a force. Okay, and if you are required to write the definition for force, this is what you can write. Therefore, a push or pull which tends to or actually produces movement in a body or changes its shape or size is called a force. Okay, now it's not necessary that you have to write this definition for now. Okay, you can stop the video, pause the video, and you can copy this definition of force. Okay, but like I was saying, it's not necessary for you to write this very definition in the exam. Okay, if you ask the definition of force, if you have a better definition, or you can express force, you want to express force in your own words, you are welcome to do that. Okay, and you will get full marks for it, provided it's correct. Okay, but you are of course free to express in your own words. It's not that you have to stick to my words that I've written over here. All right, okay, so with that, let me move forward. So here, now if you check your textbook, you will see two different words. Okay, I have used these words in the video also earlier. You will see squeeze and stretch. Okay, remember, squeeze and stretch are also forces, of course. When we squeeze something, we are applying a force. When we stretch something, we are applying a force. Okay, so squeeze and stretch are also forces, but squeeze basically means push. When we squeeze something, all right, when we squeeze something, we are pushing. We are pushing from all sides. Squeeze means basically it is pushing, but pushing from all sides. Okay, like when we squeeze a piece of paper, right, what are we doing? We are pushing the paper from all sides, all directions. So that is pushing from all sides or all directions is what is called squeeze. So remember, squeeze is basically a push, and stretch means what? Stretch basically means a pull. Like when we stretch this spring, okay, what are we doing? We are pulling it from both the sides. We are basically pulling it. So squeeze basically means push. Stretch basically means pull. Remember that. Okay, so now let us look at the examples of force. We push or pull a door to open or close it. Okay, every day we either push or pull a door to open or to close it. So push, what are we doing? We are exerting force on the door. By either pushing it or pulling it, what are we doing? We are exerting force on the door. Then we push a toothpaste outside its tube every morning, or could be every evening also. Okay, so what we do is in order to take the toothpaste out of its tube, okay, what we do is we squeeze the tube, or we push the tube. All right, I think squeeze would be a better word over here. So we squeeze the paste out of the toothpaste every morning or every evening. So what are we doing? We're basically exerting a force. Number 3, when we stretch or pull a rubber band, its length increases. I have a rubber band. Okay, I stretch or pull it. Okay, what happens? The length of the rubber band increases. So what are we doing? We are basically applying a force. Then number 4, we stretch or pull a spring, its length increases. Again, we've already spoken about this example. I have a spring, I stretch it, what happens? Its length increases. Next example, when we kick or push a basketball or football lying on the floor, it starts moving. Okay, kicking is basically pushing. Alright, so when we kick or push a basketball, or could be any ball, football, volleyball, TT ball, tennis ball, whatever, okay, lying on the floor, what happens? The ball will start rolling, or the ball will start moving. Okay, so what are we doing? We are applying a force. Number 6, when we squeeze a piece of paper, its shape changes. Okay, so this also I have already spoken. Okay, you must have done this so many times, all right, maybe in your classroom or also at home. Okay, so when we squeeze a piece of paper, all right, what happens? Its shape changes. Also, not just its shape, its size also changes. Okay, so this is about the introduction to force and its different examples. All right, you can copy this definition. Okay, let me show you some of the pictures that's there in the book also. All right, here is an example of push force as push to move the baby stroller. Okay, so this is the baby stroller, also called a perambulator. Okay, so you must have seen people pushing this baby stroller. such that it moves. So what are we doing? We are applying a force. Sometimes you must have seen people pushing cars or vehicles, okay, like this. All right, so what are they doing to make it move? Of course, okay, so what are they doing? They are applying a force. So this is an example of force as push. Now this force as pull. It's a garden roller. I don't know whether you've seen people do this or not, okay, but you have a garden roller like this, okay. You can either pull it or you can also push it, okay. So what are we doing? We are applying a force, okay. Bullock cart. This is what happens. This bull, it pulls this bullock cart, or also horses also it could be, okay. So horses will pull the cart. All right. So force as pull on a luggage trolley. Okay. You must have seen this kind of a thing, or in Darjeeling, you must have seen people pull water in buckets. Okay, they have about 10 buckets. All right, and they pull the bucket like this in a trolley like this. Okay, so that is applying force as a pull. Rickshaw puller. All right, so you must have seen in Siliguri, in Siliguri you must have seen something like this. Okay, so what is he doing? He is pulling the rickshaw by applying a force on the pedals, of course. Okay, now if you go to Calcutta, in Calcutta you will see hand pulled rickshaws also. Okay, where people like this, it'll be something like this. Only thing is people will be sitting over here, okay, and a rickshaw puller will be pulling the hand pulled rickshaw. Okay, so these are the examples of force. All right, so this is the introductory video to forces. In the next class we are going to look at the effects of forces. In the next video we are going to look at the effects of forces. Okay, so stay safe, class 6. All right, and check this video. Any problem you have, you can always let me know. Okay, so stay safe, take care. Thank you.